At a train station, a man climbs onto the top of a stationary tanker car, directly beneath high-voltage overhead power lines. As he nears the top of the ladder, the electricity arcs from the line to his body, causing a massive explosion that engulfs him in flames. This is a fatal and entirely preventable tragedy. Overhead railway lines carry extremely high voltage, and electricity can arc across a significant distance. Inside an auto repair garage, a mechanic is bent over his task near a vehicle lift. Suddenly, a car enters the bay at an unsafe speed. The driver fails to see the mechanic and strikes him, pinning him against the lift before he falls to the ground. This incident is a stark reminder that repair shops are active work environments. Drivers must enter bays at a crawl, and workshops should enforce a strict policy where a spotter guides all vehicle movements to prevent such collisions. In a dimly lit warehouse, workers stand in a narrow aisle between towering, unstable stacks of grain sacks. One of the stacks suddenly gives way, triggering a catastrophic collapse of the surrounding sacks. The workers are instantly buried under an avalanche of heavy bags. This demonstrates the critical importance of proper material stacking procedures. Bags should be interlocked. On a construction site, workers are dismantling a large tower crane. A man is standing on a concrete structure directly beneath the main boom. Suddenly, a critical structural support gives way, and the massive steel boom collapses, falling directly onto the worker and crushing him. Other workers nearby narrowly escape the falling debris. A man has climbed to the top of a high-voltage transmission tower. He stands on one of the cross arms and recklessly reaches out to touch a live power line. He is instantly electrocuted in a bright flash, and his body is thrown from the tower, falling a great height to the ground below. This is not a work accident, but a tragic and deliberate act of extreme disregard for a well-known and lethal danger. These towers carry incredibly high voltage, and any unauthorized climbing or contact will almost certainly be fatal. On a steep city street, a large delivery truck parked at the curb begins to roll backward, its brakes having apparently failed. Gaining speed rapidly, it smashes into a parked SUV. The force of the impact shoves the SUV into two pedestrians on the sidewalk, brutally pinning them against a building wall. The camera, mounted on the runaway truck, shows the devastating aftermath as the immense weight crushes the victims. This disaster is a catastrophic example of mechanical failure. For drivers of heavy vehicles, especially on an incline, pre-trip brake inspections, the proper use of wheel chocks, and ensuring the parking brake is fully engaged are not just best practices. They are life-saving duties. Inside a small food stall, a customer standing at the counter suddenly faints, collapsing backward onto the floor. The employee behind the counter is startled, and another customer immediately rushes to the man's aid. He checks on the fallen man and attempts to rouse him while another woman approaches to help. The scene is a powerful reminder of the importance of being prepared for medical emergencies in any public space. Knowing basic first aid,
such as how to check for breathing and place someone in the recovery position, can be crucial while waiting for professional medical services to arrive. In a factory, a worker is stacking finished panels next to a long cutting machine. He turns and walks away, passing directly in front of the machine's outfeed conveyor. At that exact moment, a large panel is ejected from the machine at high speed, striking him squarely in the back and throwing him violently to the floor. Several colleagues witness the event and rush to his aid, attempting to assess his injuries. This incident demonstrates a critical failure in machine guarding and safety zoning. High-speed ejection points on machinery must always have physical guards or be located within a clearly marked exclusion zone to prevent workers from inadvertently walking into the line of fire. A tractor moves down a narrow street. Unseen by the driver, a small child is sitting directly in the vehicle's path. The tractor continues forward, running over the child in its blind spot. This tragic incident underscores the critical importance of performing a 360-degree walk-around before operating. In a red coat walks through a snowy courtyard. Suddenly, a large mass of snow and ice slides off the roof of the adjacent building, burying her completely. This highlights a deadly overhead hazard.
At a storefront, a young girl leans against an ice cream freezer. Upon touching the metal frame, she receives a powerful electric shock, causing her body to seize. A bystander quickly pulls her to safety. This frightening incident was likely caused by faulty wiring or a grounding failure that electrified the freezer's chassis. It's a critical reminder that all commercial electrical appliances must be regularly inspected and properly maintained by certified electricians to prevent such life-threatening malfunctions. A worker on a metal ladder is positioned near high-voltage power lines. As he reaches up, he makes contact with a live wire. At a loading dock, a worker stands between two trucks, distracted by his phone. The driver of one truck begins reversing, completely unaware of the man in his blind spot. The truck slowly pins the worker against the stationary vehicle. This fatal incident highlights the danger of distraction in active work zones. The crush zone between vehicles is one of the most dangerous places on a loading dock and must always be avoided.
In a tire shop, a mechanic works on a large, split-rim tire mounted on a machine. The tire suddenly explodes with incredible force, sending a shockwave across the garage. These types of tires are notoriously dangerous due to high pressures. All work, especially inflation, must. A man at a railway crossing stumbles and falls onto the tracks right next to a stationary freight train. As he lies on the ground, the train suddenly begins to move, pulling him under its wheels. This horrifying incident is a brutal lesson in complacency. Never assume a stationary train will remain so. Railway lines are active danger zones, and one should never cross them except at designated crossings or linger on the tracks. A person in a raincoat walks along a sidewalk next to a tall brick wall during a heavy downpour. The wall, likely destabilized by water at its base, suddenly collapses outward, burying the pedestrian under tons of rubble. This demonstrates that during severe weather, even seemingly solid structures can fail. It's crucial to be aware of your surroundings and avoid proximity to retaining walls or old buildings. During what appears to be a tense local council meeting, a man stands by the door while others are seated at a long table. In a shocking act, He calmly pulls the pins from 3 hand grenades and drops them on the floor in front of the doorway. Panic ensues as people at the table realize what is happening. But it's too late. The grenades detonate in a series of violent explosions, engulfing the room in fire and smoke. This horrific event is a deliberate act of violence, not a workplace accident. It underscores the profound vulnerability of public gatherings and the critical need for robust security measures, controlled access points, and well-rehearsed emergency response plans for governmental and public-facing institutions.
City Street. A passenger exits a parked car and steps directly into the path of oncoming traffic without looking. A moving car strikes him at speed. This tragic event serves as a basic but vital reminder.
At a car wash, a woman is cleaning her vehicle, which is parked on an inclined ramp without wheel chocks. The car suddenly begins to roll backward. The woman attempts to stop it, but is tragically caught and crushed between the moving vehicle and a wall. This incident underscores the absolute necessity of securing a vehicle on any incline. Always engage the parking brake and use wheel chocks to prevent unintended movement, especially when working around the vehicle. On a highway, a tanker truck begins emitting a thick cloud of orange smoke, signaling a dangerous chemical reaction. The driver pulls over, exits the cab, and climbs directly on top of the tanker to inspect the leak, exposing himself to the toxic fumes. Suddenly, the pressure builds, and a massive plume of gas erupts. When dealing with hazardous materials, the primary rule is to evacuate and establish a safe perimeter. Never approach a leaking or reacting chemical tanker. Immediately contact emergency services. What appears to be a dye works or processing facility. Men are working around large ground-level vats filled with steaming, boiling liquid. The work area is wet, cluttered, and lacks any protective railings around the open vats. One worker brings a bucket to the edge of one vat. He pours the contents into the vat, triggering an immediate and violent eruption. A huge cloud of steam or a splash of boiling liquid erupts, knocking him off his feet and directly into the scalding contents. His co-workers react in a panic, rushing to his aid and desperately trying to pull him from the vat. This tragedy highlights multiple failures. First, the violent reaction suggests a dangerous chemical mix or adding a liquid to a much hotter one, causing it to flash boil. Second, the complete lack of guardrails around open vats of hazardous liquid is a critical safety violation. Inside another paper mill, a worker stands on a bench next to a machine with large rollers, attempting to manually feed a sheet of starter paper into the mechanism. This forces him to place his hands extremely close to the dangerous in-running nip point. As he guides the paper, his hand is caught by the rollers. The machine, designed to pull with immense force, relentlessly drags his arm and then his entire body into the spinning drums. A co-worker on an upper level sees the accident and frantically runs to an emergency stop button, but the damage is already done. Manually feeding material into live rollers is an exceptionally high-risk activity. This process should be automated or performed using specialized tools that keep the operator's hands far away from the nip points. On a narrow city street, 2 men are walking next to a building. A third man on the sidewalk tries to warn them, but it's too late. High above, a poorly secured pallet of heavy bags, likely at a construction site, slips from its position. The entire load plummets to the ground, landing directly on top of the two pedestrians and burying them instantly. All overhead work, especially lifting operations, requires the area below to be completely cordoned off to prevent anyone from entering the drop zone. Inside a brightly lit beauty salon, clients are receiving treatments while an employee works at a shelf. The calm is shattered in an instant as a large truck, having lost control on the street outside, smashes through the glass storefront. The vehicle plows deep into the salon, sending debris flying and narrowly missing the terrified occupants who scramble for safety. This shocking incident is a reminder that even indoor spaces can be vulnerable to external traffic hazards, especially those located at street level. In a cluttered workshop, a man works near a large machine with an exposed, rapidly rotating flywheel. He's wearing a loose, untucked shirt, a critical mistake around this type of equipment. As he moves past the machine, the back of his shirt is snagged by the flywheel. He is instantly whipped around with incredible violence, spinning in the air as the machine wraps his clothing tighter and tighter around the axle. His co-workers rush in a panic to shut off the power, but the momentum continues to spin him violently. This is a textbook example of why loose clothing is forbidden around rotating machinery. It can be grabbed in an instant, leading to horrific injuries or death. All flywheels and drive shafts must be properly guarded. This onboard footage from a city bus captures the driver navigating through traffic. A passenger stands near the front, talking on the phone. Without warning, a vehicle from the oncoming lane swerves directly into the bus's path, resulting in a devastating head-on collision. The impact is catastrophic, shattering the windshield and sending the passenger flying violently forward. The aftermath shows the complete destruction of the bus's front end. This is a brutal reminder of the immense forces involved in high-speed collisions and the importance of defensive driving and constant vigilance on the road. Inside a mobile MRI trailer, a technician is in the control room while an elderly patient using a metal walker is brought into the scanning room. As the patient gets close to the MRI machine, its powerful magnetic field suddenly activates, violently pulling the walker and the patient with it into the machine. This is a terrifying illustration of a fundamental MRI safety rule. No metallic objects are allowed near the machine while it is operational. Strict screening protocols are mandatory to prevent such a dangerous event. At a tire repair shop, a group of mechanics is gathered around a large truck tire that is being inflated. Without warning, the tire fails and explodes with devastating force. The blast wave throws the men violently in all directions. This type of catastrophic failure is a known risk with high-pressure tires. To prevent injury, such tires must always be inflated inside a reinforced safety cage, which is designed to contain the explosive force. An industrial worker performs hot work near large storage tanks. The sparks suddenly ignite flammable vapors in the area, causing a massive explosion. This highlights the critical need for hot work permits, which require testing the atmosphere for flammable gases and clearing the area of combustibles before starting. A brightly decorated truck becomes stuck while attempting to cross a set of railway tracks. Several people on the ground notice the impending danger as a train approaches at high speed. Despite their frantic attempts to signal, there is not enough time for the train to stop. The locomotive collides with the truck, obliterating it in an instant. This tragic incident is a stark reminder to never stop a vehicle on a railway crossing for any reason.
A three-wheeled taxi parks beside an open manhole. As a passenger exits with her dog, she falls directly into the uncovered sewer, while her dog safely jumps aside. This incident underscores a critical lesson. Always be aware of ground-level hazards. Open manholes must be clearly marked and barricaded to prevent such tragic falls.
A woman on a dirt road is struck from behind by a large road grader. The operator's visibility was completely obstructed by the machine's blind spots. This tragic event shows why spotters are mandatory for heavy equipment, and pedestrians must never assume they have been seen. A worker makes a fatal error by leaning into an active industrial milling machine. It suddenly cycles, the heavy head descending and crushing him against the workpiece. This tragic event demonstrates the critical need for lockout-tagout procedures. Power must be completely cut and locked before any maintenance is performed to prevent accidental activation. A man looks under the hood of his car, parked facing a wall. The vehicle, seemingly left unsecured or suffering a mechanical failure, suddenly rolls forward, pinning him against the building. This highlights a crucial safety rule. When working on a vehicle, always ensure the parking brake is set, the transmission is in park, and wheels are chocked to prevent any unintended movement. Inside a factory, operations seem normal until a violent explosion rips through the area, creating a massive fireball. This type of event often stems from the ignition of combustible dust or gas. Strict air quality monitoring and dust control systems are essential to prevent such catastrophic incidents. A worker in a steel warehouse stands on a stack of beams to guide an overhead crane. The crane begins to lift a long I-beam, but the load is improperly secured and wildly imbalanced. As it rises, it swings uncontrollably, striking the worker with immense force and pinning him. This is a fatal mistake in rigging. Loads must be perfectly balanced and secured, and all personnel must remain outside the line of fire, the area within the potential swing radius of any suspended load. A man on a flatbed truck directs a forklift operator lifting a tall, unstable stack of heavy tires. As the operator attempts to place the load, it loses its balance and topples over, crushing the man who had no time to react. Forklift loads should always be kept as low to the ground and as stable as possible. Stacking items this high creates an unacceptable risk of tipping. A worker attempts to clear a jam on a large machine with an exposed, spinning flywheel while it is still running. His clothing gets caught, and he is violently pulled into the mechanism. His horrified co-workers rush to shut off the power and desperately try to free him from the still-moving parts. This devastating accident is a graphic demonstration of why machine guards must always be in place, and why lockout and tagout procedures are non-negotiable. No maintenance should ever be performed on live equipment. In a busy shipping yard, a forklift operator carrying a large crate turns too sharply. The forks swing out and collide with the cabin of a parked three-wheeled vehicle, striking the driver inside. This emphasizes the need for clear traffic management and heightened situational awareness in areas with heavy machinery. On a construction site, a worker bends over, unaware of a nearby skid steer. The operator loses control of the pallet on the forks, which falls and strikes the worker. This shows why exclusion zones are critical. Never work beneath a suspended load. A man lies on a dump truck's chassis directly beneath the raised bed to perform maintenance. The hydraulic system fails, and the multi-ton bed slams down, crushing him instantly. This is a fatal oversight. Never work under a raised load without first securing it with certified safety props designed to prevent collapse. A man prepares to lower the heavy steel ramps on a flatbed trailer. He stands directly in the path of the second ramp as he unlatches it. He is unable to control its immense weight as it swings down, striking him with brutal force and pinning him to the ground. This equipment is far too heavy to be managed by one person without mechanical aids or a proper, safe procedure. He should have stood to the side, not in the direct path of the ramp's descent, and used a system to control its lowering speed. At a refuse site, a small girl runs up to a large, half-full commercial dumpster and playfully hangs from its edge. Her small weight is just enough to upset the container's delicate balance. The heavy dumpster begins to slowly tip over, gathering unstoppable momentum before it crashes to the ground, trapping the child underneath. Other bystanders don't seem to notice the immediate danger. This is a heartbreaking tragedy that underscores a vital lesson. Industrial work sites and heavy equipment are not playgrounds. Heavy containers, even when they seem stable, can pose a significant tipping hazard. Constant supervision and restricted access are paramount to preventing children from entering these dangerous areas. In a narrow alleyway, a man approaches a doorway and tends to an object on the ground. Suddenly, a massive explosion erupts, engulfing him in flames. He runs away in a panic, trying to extinguish the fire on his body, while the exact source of the explosion isn't visible. Tragic incidents like this are often caused by the mishandling of highly flammable or explosive materials, such as gas canisters or fuel containers. Working with such items in confined spaces without proper safety protocols is a deadly risk. At a scrap metal yard, an excavator operator briefly exits his cab. At the same time, another worker, seemingly unaware of the operator's imminent return, climbs directly into the hopper of a large baling press to clear a jam or retrieve an item. The operator gets back into the excavator and, without checking his surroundings or confirming the area is clear, begins operating the machinery. He activates the baling press, and the hydraulic ram begins to close on the trapped man. The lesson here is a critical failure in lockout, tag-out procedures. Before any worker enters a machine's danger zone for maintenance or clearing, the equipment must be completely de-energized and locked out to prevent accidental startup. This incident also highlights a severe lack of communication and situational awareness from both parties involved. While playing volleyball in a parking lot, a player runs to retrieve the ball. Unaware of a low-lying manhole cover, he trips and falls into a nearby soccer goal. This serves as a simple reminder to always be aware of your surroundings and scan for potential trip hazards, even in familiar environments. A man stands on the back of a small, stationary truck, attempting to unload a large, heavy object. He struggles to get a proper grip and loses his footing, causing him to fall backward off the truck and onto the ground below. This incident shows the risks of improper manual handling. When dealing with heavy or unwieldy loads at height, it is essential to use mechanical aids or, at minimum, have a second-person assist to ensure a stable and controlled lift. In the open back of a truck, men are riding among a load of gas cylinders. As the vehicle turns a corner, it passes under a low-hanging power line. One man, sitting elevated on the cargo, is struck by the wire and violently thrown backward. This is a clear example of why riding in a cargo area is extremely dangerous and prohibited. It exposes individuals to unseen overhead hazards, shifting loads, and the risk of ejection from the vehicle. Inside a mobile MRI trailer, a technician is in the control room while an elderly patient using a metal walker is brought into the scanning room. As the patient gets close to the MRI machine, its powerful magnetic field suddenly activates, violently pulling the walker and the patient with it into the machine. This is a terrifying illustration of a fundamental MRI safety rule. No metallic objects are allowed near the machine while it is operational. Strict screening protocols are mandatory to prevent such a dangerous event. At a tire repair shop, a group of mechanics is gathered around a large truck tire that is being inflated. Without warning, the tire fails and explodes with devastating force. The blast wave throws the men violently in all directions. This type of catastrophic failure is a known risk with high-pressure tires. To prevent injury, such tires must always be inflated inside a reinforced safety cage, which is designed to contain the explosive force. An industrial worker performs hot work near large storage tanks. The sparks suddenly ignite flammable vapors in the area, causing a massive explosion. This highlights the critical need for hot work permits, which require testing the atmosphere for flammable gases and clearing the area of combustibles before starting. A brightly decorated truck becomes stuck while attempting to cross a set of railway tracks. Several people on the ground notice the impending danger as a train approaches at high speed. Despite their frantic attempts to signal, there is not enough time for the train to stop. The locomotive collides with the truck, obliterating it in an instant. This tragic incident is a stark reminder to never stop a vehicle on a railway crossing for any reason. Inside a steel plant, a worker stands too close to moving machinery. His loose clothing gets snagged, and he is violently pulled into the equipment. This demonstrates the danger of moving parts. Workers should never wear loose clothing, and all machinery must have proper guards and emergency stops readily accessible. On a windy day, a massive sign affixed to the facade of a large commercial building suddenly breaks free from its mountings. The entire structure crashes down onto the sidewalk below. Dashcam footage shows the aftermath, where a crowd rushes to the debris, attempting to lift the heavy sign to free someone trapped underneath. This event highlights the importance of regular and thorough structural inspections for all building attachments to ensure they can withstand environmental stresses like high winds. A worker uses a cutting tool on a sealed metal drum. Sparks ignite residual vapors inside, causing a violent explosion that throws him to the ground. This demonstrates the critical rule: never apply heat or create sparks on any sealed container. A machine operator dangerously leans into the operational area of an industrial milling machine. The machine unexpectedly cycles, and its rotating spindle descends. This is a catastrophic failure of safety protocol. No part of a worker's body should ever enter a machine's danger zone unless it is fully de-energized via a lockout-tagout procedure. In a steel coil warehouse, a team of workers is using an overhead crane to reposition a massive, multi-ton coil of steel. As the suspended coil is being maneuvered, one worker positions himself directly between the moving load and another stationary coil. The suspended coil swings unexpectedly, and the worker is pinned between the two immense objects, crushing him instantly. Panic erupts as his colleagues rush to the scene. One man frantically signals the crane operator, while others desperately try to push the massive coil. But it's too heavy. More workers from across the factory floor run to assist, some bringing pry bars. For over a minute, the group struggles in a frantic but disorganized effort to create space. They attempt to use the pry bars as levers, coordinating their pushes until they finally manage to shift the coil just enough to free the victim. This devastating accident underscores a cardinal rule of overhead crane safety. Never, under any circumstances, place yourself between a suspended load and a fixed object. A clear exclusion zone must be maintained around all moving loads, and ground personnel must remain vigilant and anticipate potential load swings. The chaotic rescue also shows the importance of having an established and practiced emergency response plan for such incidents. At a water treatment plant, a worker is on a walkway. A sudden, massive explosion erupts from a basin below, obliterating the structure. This is likely a methane gas explosion, a known risk in such facilities. Proper ventilation and gas monitoring are critical. On a construction site, a forklift operates near a mobile crane being assembled. Suddenly, the crane's massive, improperly supported boom topples, crashing down directly onto the forklift and its operator. This catastrophic failure stems from poor rigging and a lack of stabilization. Complex lifts demand meticulous planning, stable ground, and ensuring every component is secured at all stages. A worker on foot directing the operation also highlights a failure to maintain a safe exclusion zone around the lift. At a rural gas station, an attendant refuels a motorcycle while the customers remain seated on it. Fuel spills onto the hot engine and instantly ignites, engulfing the bike and its riders in flames. Panic erupts as people, now on fire, fall to the ground. This horrifying incident is a direct result of ignoring basic safety rules. Engines must always be turned off during refueling to prevent hot surfaces from igniting volatile fuel vapors. The chaotic attempts to extinguish the fire also show a lack of emergency preparedness. On an automated factory line, a worker leans into a machine's path to make an adjustment. A large robotic arm, not equipped with presence-sensing safety devices, activates and strikes him, pinning him against the conveyor. After he is pulled free by co-workers, another worker enters the same danger zone and is immediately struck and trapped by the same robotic motion. This demonstrates a catastrophic failure of lockout, tag-out procedures. Humans must never enter an active robotic work cell without completely de-energizing and locking the system to make accidental startup impossible. At a roadside tire shop, a mechanic is inflating a large truck tire without using a safety cage. The tire's structural integrity fails, and it explodes with devastating force, throwing him and others to the ground. This illustrates the critical importance of using a reinforced safety cage for all high-pressure tire inflations. On a city sidewalk, a manhole cover suddenly explodes upwards, sending one person flying and causing them to fall into the open hole. These explosions are typically caused by the ignition of sewer gas or a fault in underground electrical cables, making them an unpredictable urban hazard. In a paper factory, a worker's leg becomes entangled in the giant rotating rollers of a paper winding machine. The powerful machine slowly pulls him in as his colleagues desperately try to figure out how to stop it. They struggle with the controls, unable to reverse the machine's direction in time. This horrific incident is a direct result of missing or inadequate machine guarding. All in-running nip points and rotating parts must be completely enclosed by physical barriers to make it impossible for workers to come into contact with them. The lack of a clearly accessible emergency stop button compounded the tragedy. Two men are riding unsecured in the back of a small dump truck on a dirt road. The driver takes a corner too fast, causing the unstable vehicle to lose its balance and tip over. The men are thrown violently from the truck bed as it crashes onto its side. This is a clear lesson on the dangers of transporting passengers in a cargo area. These spaces lack safety restraints and expose individuals to extreme risk of ejection during sudden maneuvers or accidents. Following a traffic accident, a victim lies injured on the road. As bystanders rush to help, a car driving in the opposite lane fails to notice the person on the ground and runs them over. This tragic event highlights the critical need to secure an accident scene immediately. Using hazard lights, warning triangles, or directing traffic is essential to protect the injured and first responders from secondary collisions, which are often just as deadly as the initial crash. In a poorly constructed room, a person is sleeping on a cot. Without warning, the concrete slab roof above them gives way, collapsing and burying the individual under tons of heavy rubble. Rescuers immediately rush in and begin frantically digging through the debris with their bare hands to pull the victim out. This catastrophic structural failure is a direct consequence of subpar construction and lack of proper reinforcement. It underscores the vital importance of adhering to building codes and using qualified engineers and builders, as any shortcuts in overhead construction can have fatal consequences for those below. In a repair yard, a mechanic is working on a truck with its cab tilted forward to access the engine. Another man works on a pickup truck parked directly in front of it. Suddenly, the hydraulic prop holding the massive cab fails, and it slams shut, crushing the man working on the pickup. This is a critical failure of basic maintenance safety. Never trust hydraulics alone. A secondary mechanical safety lock or a properly rated support brace must always be used when working under any raised heavy component. During a demolition, workers use a small front-end loader and a makeshift hoist to lower a large metal smokestack. One worker stands directly in the fall path, guiding the base. The temporary rigging fails, and the massive pipe crashes down, striking the worker and pinning him. His colleagues rush to try and lift the immense weight. This incident is a textbook example of disregarding rigging safety. Never stand under a suspended load. All lifting operations must be planned by a competent person, using properly rated equipment and maintaining a clear and respected drop zone at all times.
In a yard, workers are unloading a truck. One man tosses a large bag containing a chemical reagent onto the ground. The impact causes the bag to rupture, triggering a violent chemical explosion that engulfs the area in a toxic cloud.
At night, a man decides to check the fuel level in his car by shining a flashlight into the gas tank. The fuel vapors ignite instantly, causing a massive explosion that engulfs the vehicle in flames. This is a critical lesson. Never introduce any source of ignition, including flashlights, near open fuel containers. A worker stands beside a flatbed truck loaded with heavy metal materials. Suddenly, the securing straps fail, and a massive bundle of material falls from the truck, crushing the man beneath its weight. This incident highlights the critical importance of proper load securement. On a busy city street, a passenger exits a parked car and steps directly into the path of oncoming traffic without looking. A moving car strikes him at speed. This tragic event serves as a basic but vital reminder.
At a car wash, a woman is cleaning her vehicle, which is parked on an inclined ramp without wheel chocks. The car suddenly begins to roll backward. The woman attempts to stop it, but is tragically caught and crushed between the moving vehicle and a wall. This incident underscores the absolute necessity of securing a vehicle on any incline. Always engage the parking brake and use wheel chocks to prevent unintended movement, especially when working around the vehicle. On a highway, a tanker truck begins emitting a thick cloud of orange smoke, signaling a dangerous chemical reaction. The driver pulls over, exits the cab, and climbs directly on top of the tanker to inspect the leak, exposing himself to the toxic fumes. Suddenly, the pressure builds, and a massive plume of gas erupts. When dealing with hazardous materials, The primary rule is to evacuate and establish a safe perimeter. Never approach a leaking or reacting chemical tanker. Immediately contact emergency services. At an outdoor work site, a worker walks near a moving forklift carrying a large, view-obstructing load. The forklift operator, unable to see the pedestrian, makes a turn and crushes the man under the heavy material. This incident highlights the critical need for designated pedestrian walkways and clear separation between workers on foot and heavy machinery. Forklift operators should always use a spotter when their view is obstructed. In a gravel yard, a large fuel tanker is parked near a smaller truck and a pile of burning debris. The fire suddenly spreads along the ground, quickly reaching the smaller truck and causing it to explode in a massive fireball. The flames then spread rapidly across the yard. This catastrophic event demonstrates the absolute prohibition of open flames or any ignition source near flammable material storage areas. Even a small fire can lead to a chain reaction with devastating consequences, emphasizing the need for strict fire safety protocols and designated hot work zones. A worker stands on the bed of a flatbed truck as a forklift operator attempts to unload heavy tires. The operator misjudges the load's balance, causing the tires to slip off the forks and fall directly onto the worker below, knocking him down. This accident is a clear violation of safe loading procedures. Ground personnel must never be in the operational area of a forklift, especially directly under a suspended or elevated load. A man, clearly impaired, climbs a utility pole and begins tampering with a transformer using a metal tool. He makes contact with high-voltage components, causing a massive electrical arc that throws him from the pole. This is not a workplace accident, but a tragic result of reckless behavior. Electrical infrastructure is extremely dangerous, and any unauthorized contact can be instantly fatal. In a public transit station, passengers are riding an escalator while construction work is being done overhead. Suddenly, a large section of the suspended ceiling collapses, raining debris down on the people below. Panic ensues as bystanders rush to help the injured. This incident highlights a severe failure to secure a work site. Active construction zones in public areas must be completely isolated from public access, and all overhead structures must be properly supported to prevent collapse. An unsupervised young girl on an apartment balcony reaches out and touches a bundle of electrical wires running alongside the building. She receives a powerful electric shock. This incident is a heartbreaking reminder of the constant need for adult supervision of young children, especially in environments with potential hazards like exposed wiring. At a gas station, a group of bikers is refueling their motorcycles. A car approaches at high speed, loses control, and plows directly into the group, sending people and bikes flying. This violent crash is a direct result of reckless driving. While driving a bus, the operator suddenly experiences a severe medical emergency, slumping over in his seat. In his last moments of consciousness, he heroically manages to apply the brakes, bringing the bus to a safe stop and saving his passengers. This incredible act highlights the immense responsibility of professional drivers. Regular health screenings and knowing the warning signs of a medical crisis are crucial for anyone operating a vehicle.